My name is Otto, and I'm 32 years old. Who would have thought a high school graduate like me would build a $10 million online business from scratch? For years, I financially supported my wife's entire family, including her mother, who never missed a chance to remind me I wasn't good enough. I paid for everything while she belittled me behind closed doors and eventually in front of everyone. The day she called me a lowlife and told me to leave, I finally did exactly what she asked. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear what happened next. I grew up in a tiny town in Wisconsin where most people worked at the local factory or farm. My parents were the definition of hardworking Americans. Dad worked double shifts at the manufacturing plant, and Mom cleaned houses during the day and waited tables at night. They did everything they could to keep food on our table and a roof over our heads, but money was always tight. We lived paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes even that wasn't enough. School was never my strong suit. I wasn't failing, but I definitely wasn't at the top of my class either. My teachers always said I was smart, but couldn't seem to focus. What they didn't understand was that, while they were teaching algebra, I was calculating profit margins in my head for the small businesses I was running. It started with mowing lawns when I was 12, then washing cars, and by 16, I was buying broken electronics, fixing them, and reselling them for triple what I paid. My senior year, I built a website to expand my electronics repair business beyond our town, and orders started coming in from neighboring states. That's when I knew I had found my calling. When graduation rolled around, everyone expected me to go to college. My guidance counselor pushed for it, my teachers recommended it, and my parents desperately wanted it for me. They saw college as the only path to success, the ticket out of our financial struggles. But something inside me knew differently. I'm going to grow my business instead. I told my parents one night at dinner. The look of disappointment on their faces is something I'll never forget. They didn't say much, but I could read their thoughts. Without a degree, I was setting myself up for failure. For the next 2 years, I worked 18-hour days from our basement. My online electronics business grew steadily, and I expanded into custom computer builds for gamers. The money started coming in faster than I could count it. By 22, I had moved into my own apartment and hired my first employees. That's when I met Sophia at a regional business conference in Chicago. I was there to network with potential suppliers, feeling somewhat out of place among all the suits and business degrees. Sophia was representing her father's investment firm, and she caught my eye immediately. She was intelligent, poised, and incredibly beautiful. We started talking during a coffee break, and I was surprised when she seemed interested in my business model. Unlike others who dismissed me for my lack of formal education, Sophia asked insightful questions and seemed genuinely impressed by what I had built. We exchanged numbers, and by the end of the week, we were dating. Sophia came from a completely different world than mine. Her family lived in an upscale suburb of Chicago in a house that could fit my entire hometown neighborhood. Both her parents had advanced degrees, her father an MBA from Wharton and her mother a doctorate in art history. Her brother was at Harvard Law, and her sister was completing a medical degree at Johns Hopkins. Education wasn't just valued in their family, it was the currency of worth. When Sophia first brought me home to meet her family, I was nervous but hopeful. Her father, George, surprised me by being genuinely interested in my business. He asked detailed questions about my growth strategy and seemed impressed by my answers. Her sister Amanda was polite, and her brother Michael was friendly enough, if a bit condescending. But then there was Eleanor, Sophia's mother. From the moment I walked in, I could feel her eyes assessing me, finding me lacking. Her smile never reached her eyes when she shook my hand. Throughout dinner, she peppered me with questions that seemed designed to highlight my lack of education. "And which university did you attend, Otto?" she asked sweetly. "I actually went straight into business after high school," I replied. Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, how resourceful of you." The conversation moved on, but I noticed how she mentioned prestigious schools and degrees at every opportunity, glancing at me each time as if to remind everyone of what I lacked. Despite Eleanor's coldness, Sophia and I fell deeply in love. After a year of dating, I proposed, And she said yes, immediately. The wedding planning revealed more of Eleanor's true feelings about me. She pushed for Sophia to reconsider, suggesting she was settling for someone without the proper pedigree. He's successful now, dear. But without education, how long will that last? I overheard her saying to Sophia one day. These self-made types often flame out quickly. Sophia defended me fiercely, but I could see the arguments were taking a toll on her. On our wedding day, Eleanor maintained her composure publicly, but her toast contained subtle digs about hoping her daughter would continue to elevate herself and those around her. While looking directly at me, I chose to focus on my beautiful bride and our future together. But Eleanor's words lingered in the back of my mind. Little did I know, they were just the beginning. After our honeymoon, my business entered a period of explosive growth. I had developed a new service platform that combined electronics repair with custom software solutions for small businesses. Orders flooded in faster than we could handle them, and I had to lease a larger office space and hire 20 new employees within 3 months. Sophia had quit her job at her father's firm to help me manage the rapidly expanding business. Her background in finance proved invaluable as we navigated the complexities of scaling. Together, we made an unstoppable team. My creative vision paired with her analytical mind. Within 2 years of our marriage, the company valuation hit $5 million. By year 3, we had clients in every state and were expanding internationally. Magazine articles started featuring our success story, and larger companies began approaching us with acquisition offers that we politely declined. During this time, Sophia and I had been saving for our dream home. We had specific requirements and hadn't found the perfect place yet, so we were temporarily staying in a small apartment. When Sophia's parents suggested we move in with them while house hunting, I was hesitant because of Eleanor, but Sophia was excited about the idea. It'll give you a chance to really bond with my family, she said hopefully. And Mom will finally see how amazing you are when she gets to know you better. I wasn't convinced but agreed to give it a try. The mansion had plenty of space, and I figured I could avoid Eleanor most of the time. We moved into the east wing of their house, with plans to stay for just a few months. 2 weeks after we moved in, disaster struck Sophia's family. George's investment firm collapsed after his partner embezzled millions and fled the country. Overnight, their financial situation became precarious. The FBI froze many of their assets during the investigation, even though George wasn't implicated in the fraud. The family was in shock. George aged 10 years in a week, his hair seemingly turning gray overnight. Eleanor walked around in a daze, unable to comprehend their new reality. They faced losing the house, pulling Michael and Amanda from their prestigious schools, and completely restructuring their lives. Without hesitation, I stepped in. I'll cover everything until this gets sorted out, I told George one evening as he sat staring blankly at financial documents. Otto, we couldn't possibly, he started. Your family, I interrupted. This isn't up for discussion. And so, I began paying their mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes on their enormous home. I covered Michael's Harvard tuition and Amanda's medical school expenses. When Eleanor needed surgery for a sudden gallbladder problem, I paid the portion their insurance didn't cover, nearly $40,000 out of pocket. My business continued to thrive, despite the additional financial burden. We hit the $10 million valuation mark on our 5th anniversary, and I surprised Sophia with a vacation home in Hawaii, a beautiful beachfront property that could serve both as a getaway and a smart investment. Throughout all this, Eleanor's attitude toward me remained unchanged, if not worse. While accepting my financial help, she continued to make subtle comments about my background. If only Otto had gone to Wharton like you, George, she would say at dinner. Imagine how much more successful he might be with proper training. Or, she would introduce me to her friends as Sophia's husband, the entrepreneur. He's done quite well for himself. Despite only having a high school diploma, each comment stung. But I reminded myself that I was doing this for Sophia and her family, not for recognition or gratitude. Still, as the months passed, the constant belittlement began to wear on me. For her part, Sophia noticed her mother's behavior and would often apologize to me privately. She's just old-fashioned about education, she would explain. Deep down, She appreciates everything you do for us. I wasn't so sure. Eleanor accepted my gifts to the family. The new car I bought when hers broke down. The luxury cruise I sent her and George on for their anniversary. The extensive kitchen renovation she had always wanted, with a perfunctory thank you, and then continued her subtle campaign against me the very next day. For 2 years, we lived like this, me providing for everyone while being treated like an outsider by Eleanor. I funded family vacations I was made to feel unwelcome on. I paid for dinner parties where Eleanor seated me at the far end of the table from the important guests. I covered the costs of her lavish charity events where she would point out every attendee with a doctorate but conveniently forget to mention her son-in-law who made it all possible. Throughout it all, I reminded myself that family was complicated, and Eleanor's generation placed different values on formal education. I tried to be patient, to rise above it, to focus on the fact that I was able to provide security for Sophia and her family during their darkest time. But somewhere deep inside, resentment began to build. A voice whispered that no amount of success would ever be enough for Eleanor, that she would never see me as worthy of her daughter. I pushed the voice away, determined to prove her wrong through continued kindness and support. Yet with each dismissive glance and backhanded compliment, the voice grew a little louder. By our 3rd year living in the mansion, the daily indignities had become routine. Eleanor had perfected the art of making me feel inferior without saying anything explicitly offensive enough for others to call her out. Sunday family dinners were particularly excruciating. Eleanor would spend hours preparing elaborate meals, then use them as a stage to highlight my outsider status. She would serve everyone while discussing topics specifically chosen to exclude me. Reminiscing about Ivy League experiences, name-dropping professors I wouldn't know, or discussing classic literature in a way that presumed education I didn't have. "Otto, do pass the potatoes," she would say with a tight smile. "And Amanda, tell us more about the fascinating lecture series your medical ethics professor is hosting this semester." If I tried to join these conversations, Eleanor would listen with a patronizing smile before subtly changing the subject. Once, when I shared an insight about a business article I'd read, she nodded politely and then immediately turned to Michael. "Speaking of intellectual pursuits, Michael, how is your law review article coming along? Such prestigious recognition for someone so young." The message was clear. My contributions, no matter how thoughtful, were not on the same level as her educated children's. When introducing me to her friends or extended family members, Eleanor had a particular way of undermining me. "This is Otto, Sophia's husband," she would say. "He's just a high school graduate, but he's done surprisingly well with his little computer business." That surprisingly carried the weight of her real meaning. That my success was an anomaly, a stroke of luck, rather than the result of intelligence or hard work. The little computer business that employed over 100 people and generated 8 figures in annual revenue was always diminished in her descriptions. Things took an even more uncomfortable turn when Eleanor began inviting Richard, Sophia's ex-boyfriend, to family gatherings. Richard was a cardiothoracic surgeon from a wealthy family. Exactly the type of man Eleanor had always wanted for her daughter. He was recently divorced and clearly still interested in Sophia, though she gave him no encouragement. Richard was just telling me about his groundbreaking research. Eleanor would gush during these gatherings. "It's being published in the Journal of Medicine next month. So impressive to be advancing human knowledge that way." She would then glance at me with a look that clearly asked, "And what have you contributed to the world?" After the 3rd such gathering, I approached Eleanor privately in the kitchen as she prepared coffee. "I notice Richard has been around quite often," I said casually. "I'm not sure if you realize how uncomfortable that makes me feel." Eleanor turned to me with wide, innocent eyes. "Oh? Richard is an old family friend. Surely you're not threatened by him, Otto. He and Sophia are ancient history. Besides, he's such a brilliant man. We all enjoy his company and insights. I would think you'd appreciate being around such accomplished people." Her implication was clear. If I was bothered by Richard's presence, it was because of my own insecurity about not measuring up intellectually. I tried discussing the situation with Sophia, who was sympathetic but conflicted. "Mom doesn't mean anything by it," she insisted. "She's just trying to maintain old friendships. Richard's parents have been their friends for decades. But can't you see she's trying to make me feel inferior? I asked. She practically throws him at you in front of me. Sophia sighed. I know Mom can be difficult, but she's still struggling with Dad's business collapse. Having her old social circle around comforts her. Please try to be patient for a little longer. For Sophia, I agreed to endure it. But each gathering with Richard present drove another wedge between me and Eleanor. And increasingly, between me and Sophia as well. Meanwhile, my business faced its first serious challenge. A major competitor launched a similar service platform at lower prices, and we temporarily lost some market share. I had to work longer hours, often coming home late and exhausted. These late nights were necessary to develop new features that would put us back on top. But Eleanor interpreted my absence differently. Business troubles, Otto? She asked one morning when I came down for coffee after working until 3 a.m. I always say that in this economy, sustainable success requires proper academic foundations. Perhaps you should consider taking some business courses at the community college. The suggestion that I needed community college courses to run my multi-million-dollar company was infuriating. But I bit my tongue. What made it worse was discovering that Eleanor had been going through my financial statements when I accidentally left them in the study one night. I found her reading them, a concerned expression on her face. Can I help you with something? I asked from the doorway. She jumped slightly, then composed herself. Oh, Otto. These papers were just lying about. I was tidying up and noticed some concerning numbers. These projections show a potential 15% revenue decline next quarter. Those are worst-case scenario projections, I explained, taking the papers from her hands, part of standard business planning. And they were in my private briefcase. Not lying about, Eleanor sniffed. Well, I was simply concerned for Sophia's future security. Given your unconventional background, I feel responsible for keeping an eye on her financial well-being. The implication that I couldn't be trusted to provide for my wife because I lacked a college degree was the last straw. That night, I told Sophia we needed to accelerate our house hunting and move out as soon as possible. She agreed half-heartedly, but I could tell she was torn between her loyalty to me and her attachment to her family home. As the weeks passed, I felt increasingly isolated in the mansion. The only person who treated me with consistent respect was George, who had come to value my business acumen and often sought my advice. But even our relationship was strained by my growing conflict with Eleanor and his reluctance to confront his wife about her behavior. Despite Eleanor's pessimistic assumptions, my company was actually recovering nicely from the temporary setback. I had developed an innovative new service tier that was attracting enterprise clients, and our projections were once again trending upward. But I kept this information to myself, tired of having to constantly prove my worth to someone determined not to see it. The mansion that had never felt like home now felt like enemy territory. I was an unwelcome outsider, despite paying all the bills. The tension was palpable, and something had to give. I just didn't expect it would happen so publicly and dramatically. George's 60th birthday arrived, and Eleanor planned an extravagant celebration at the mansion. She invited over 70 people, family members, old friends, former business associates, and of course, Richard the surgeon. I had been working on a major client proposal but promised Sophia I would be there on time. Unfortunately, just as I was preparing to leave the office, our biggest potential client called with urgent questions about our proposal. This was a multi-million-dollar contract that could secure our company's growth for years to come. I had no choice but to take the call, which ran much longer than expected. By the time I arrived at the party, dinner was already being served. I slipped in quietly, apologizing to George as I took my seat beside Sophia, who looked stressed and disappointed. "Where have you been?" she whispered. "Mom's been making comments about your absence for the last hour. Major client emergency," I explained. I got here as quickly as I could. Eleanor, who was seated at the head of the table beside George, didn't bother to lower her voice. "Ah, the workaholic finally joins us. What a shame to miss most of your father-in-law's birthday celebration." "Some things are more important than money, Otto," I forced a smile. "I completely agree, Eleanor. That's why I'm here now. The dinner proceeded uncomfortably, with Eleanor making pointed comments about commitment to family values, while Richard, seated directly across from me, nodded in sage agreement. I focused on George, raising a genuine toast to his health and happiness that seemed to touch him deeply. As the evening progressed and the alcohol flowed freely, Eleanor became increasingly uninhibited in her commentary. By the time dessert was served, she was on her fourth glass of wine and speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. You know what I admire most about this family? She announced to the table at large. Our commitment to excellence in education. George and I raised our children to value knowledge above material success. Sophia and her siblings attended the finest schools, surrounded themselves with intellectual peers, and positioned themselves to make real contributions to society. Her gaze fixed on me. Then, along comes Otto, who never even bothered with college, yet somehow has convinced himself that making money is equivalent to true accomplishment. A painful silence fell over the table. Sophia reached for my hand under the tablecloth, squeezing it in apology. "Mom, please," she said quietly. "This isn't the time." But Eleanor was just getting started. She stood, wine glass in hand, swaying slightly. "Let me tell you all something about my son-in-law," she continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "He thinks because he can pay our bills, he's one of us. But money cannot buy class or education. It cannot buy the years of intellectual refinement that separate the truly accomplished from the merely lucky." I remained silent, unwilling to create a scene at George's birthday celebration. Eleanor mistook my silence for weakness and pressed on. "Otto has been playing at success, but without proper foundations. It's just a house of cards. He's already having business troubles, you know, coming home at all hours, stressed about competitors. That's what happens when you try to skip the proper steps." Richard nodded sympathetically, adding, "It's a common pattern with self-made entrepreneurs without formal business training. The initial success often can't be sustained long-term." That's when Eleanor delivered the blow that would change everything. "You're not good enough for my daughter, Otto. You never have been. You're an uneducated, jobless lowlife who just got lucky. We've tolerated you because Sophia chose you, but it's time you acknowledged your place. Perhaps you should leave this family before your inevitable failure embarrasses us all." The room went completely still. 70 people sat in shocked silence, forks suspended in midair, all eyes darting between Eleanor and me. George looked mortified, Amanda and Michael uncomfortable, and Richard barely concealed a satisfied smirk. I looked at Sophia, waiting for her to defend me, to stand up to her mother at last. She squeezed my hand again and whispered, "She's drunk. Just ignore it. We can talk about it tomorrow." In that moment, I realized a fundamental truth. After years of supporting this family, of paying their bills, funding their educations, and maintaining their lifestyle, I was still an outsider. And Sophia, despite loving me, would never fully stand with me against her mother. I calmly placed my napkin beside my plate and stood. "Thank you for your honesty, Eleanor," I said quietly. "I've always known how you felt about me, but I appreciated you keeping up appearances until now. George, I'm sorry this happened at your birthday celebration. You deserve better." I looked around the table at the stunned faces. To everyone else, please enjoy the rest of your evening. The party, like everything else in this house for the past 3 years, has been paid for by this uneducated lowlife. Consider it my parting gift." With that, I walked out, ignoring Sophia's calls behind me. I drove around for hours, thinking about everything that had happened since I married into this family. By the time I returned to the mansion, the party was over, and Sophia was waiting for me in our bedroom, her eyes red from crying. "Otto, I'm so sorry," she began. Mom was completely out of line. "She didn't mean those things." "Yes, she did," I replied, my voice steady. "She's meant them from the day we met. The only difference is that she finally said them out loud." "What do you want me to do?" Sophia asked desperately. "Cut off my entire family? Move away from everyone I love?" Her question revealed everything. In her mind, standing by me would mean losing her family. She couldn't imagine a middle ground where she supported her husband while maintaining relationships with her parents on different terms. "I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do," I said finally. "But I need some time away from here." "From all of this, are you leaving me?" she asked, voice breaking. "I'm leaving this toxic environment. Whether that means leaving you depends on what you decide is most important to you." We talked until sunrise, going in circles. Sophia acknowledged her mother's behavior was wrong, but insisted she would change if given time. I pointed out she'd had 3 years and had only gotten worse. By morning, we were exhausted and no closer to a resolution. All I knew was that I couldn't spend another day in that house being treated like a charity case by the very people I supported. As Sophia finally fell asleep, I made my decision. It was time to leave, just as Eleanor had suggested. The next morning, while Sophia was still sleeping, I packed a single suitcase with essentials. I wrote her a note explaining that I needed space to think and would be in touch soon. I didn't specify where I was going, only that I wasn't abandoning our marriage but needed perspective away from her family's influence. I quietly loaded my car and left before anyone else in the mansion was awake. My first stop was the office, where I met with my executive team and explained that I would be working remotely for the foreseeable future. They were surprised but supportive. We had already established effective remote work protocols during the pandemic. By afternoon, I was on a plane to Hawaii, headed for the vacation property Sophia and I had purchased the previous year. The beachfront home was fully furnished but had barely been used. We had visited only twice since buying it. Now, it would become my sanctuary. Stepping into the house, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The sound of waves, the gentle breeze, the absence of judgment. It was exactly what I needed. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely without worrying about proving myself worthy of acceptance. The first few days were a mix of emotions. I missed Sophia terribly, but felt liberated from Eleanor's constant criticism. I threw myself into work, focusing on finalizing the major contract I'd been negotiating. By the end of my first week in Hawaii, we secured the deal. A $12 million service agreement that would increase our company valuation significantly. I texted Sophia to let her know I was safe, but needed more time. Her responses were emotional, alternating between understanding my position and begging me to come back. She revealed that Eleanor was telling everyone I had left because my business was failing, painting herself as the concerned mother who had seen it coming. This manipulation didn't surprise me, but it strengthened my resolve to stay away. I instructed my finance department to make a significant change. Effective immediately, all automatic payments to the mansion and the family's expenses would stop. The credit cards I had provided for emergency use were to be deactivated. I wasn't trying to be vindictive. I simply wanted them to understand the reality of their situation without my support. Within days, the messages from Sophia took on a different tone. Eleanor was panicking about unpaid bills. George was worried about mortgage payments. Michael and Amanda were calling about tuition fees. The reality of their financial dependence was finally hitting home. "Why are you punishing everyone for what Mom did?" Sophia asked during one of our phone calls. "I'm not punishing anyone," I replied calmly. "I'm simply no longer enabling a family that doesn't respect me. Your mother called me jobless and uneducated. Let's see how the educated members of the family support themselves now." It might sound harsh, but it was necessary. For too long, I had allowed myself to be disrespected while providing a luxurious lifestyle for my critics. Something had to change. Meanwhile, I was rediscovering myself in Hawaii. I joined a local business owners group and found a community of entrepreneurs who valued innovation and results over academic credentials. I started surfing in the mornings, reconnecting with the physical world after years of stress. I volunteered at a program teaching computer skills to underprivileged high school students, finding purpose in helping kids who reminded me of my younger self. As the weeks passed, my company continued to thrive. The new enterprise contract led to others, and our valuation increased to $15 million. I worked efficiently from my home office with ocean views, taking video calls with clients who never knew or cared whether I had a college degree. They only cared about results. Back on the mainland, the situation was evolving dramatically. Sophia called to tell me that Eleanor had been forced to take a part-time job at an art gallery. Her first paid employment in over 30 years. George was selling his collectible cars and considering renting out parts of the mansion. Michael had taken a leave of absence from Harvard Law to work at a local firm and help with expenses. Amanda was applying for medical school scholarships she previously hadn't needed. Everyone's struggling, Otto, Sophia said, her voice tired. Is this really what you wanted? What I wanted was to be treated with basic respect while supporting your family, I replied. What I wanted was a wife who would stand up for me when I was publicly humiliated. What I got instead was years of being treated like an ATM machine with no feelings. There was a long silence before Sophia spoke again. I miss you. And I'm sorry I didn't defend you that night. I was wrong. It was the first time she had fully acknowledged her part in the situation, rather than making excuses for her mother or asking me to be the bigger person. It was a start. After 2 months in Hawaii, Sophia asked if she could visit. I agreed, curious about where we stood and whether our marriage could be salvaged. When she arrived, I barely recognized her. The perfectly polished socialite had been replaced by someone more natural, more authentic. She had dark circles under her eyes and had lost weight, but there was also a new strength in her gaze. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said as we walked along the beach that first evening. About us, about my family, about who I want to be. I let Mom dictate too much of my life, including how I behaved in our marriage. I should have stood up for you years ago. Why didn't you? I asked. The question that had haunted me for months. Sophia looked out at the ocean. Fear, I guess. Fear of losing her approval. Fear of family conflict. But these past months, without you, have shown me what real loss feels like. I don't want to lose you, Otto. Not for my mother. Not for anyone. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was the honest conversation we should have had years ago. Over the next week, Sophia and I reconnected, discussing painful truths and possible futures. She revealed that her mother had finally been confronted by George, who blamed Eleanor's behavior for driving away the son-in-law who had saved them from financial ruin. Near the end of Sophia's visit, something unexpected happened. The local business journal ran a feature on remote executives, highlighting my company's growth and my decision to run operations from Hawaii. The article mentioned our recent valuation increase to $15 million and quoted clients praising our innovative approach. Somehow, the article made its way back to Eleanor. The phone call came on Sophia's last day in Hawaii. Otto, Eleanor's voice was strained, lacking its usual confidence. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I've been busy running my apparently non-existent business, I replied coolly. She ignored the jab. I've seen the article about your company. It seems you're doing quite well. Yes, it turns out an uneducated lowlife can actually build something lasting. Imagine that. There was a pause before she continued, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. The bank is threatening foreclosure on the house. George has sold almost everything of value. We're running out of options. What she was asking was clear, though she couldn't bring herself to say it directly. After all her cruelty, she was now asking for my help. What exactly are you calling about, Eleanor? I pushed, wanting her to acknowledge the reality of the situation. Another long pause. We need help, Otto. Financial help. I know I don't deserve to ask after what I said. But I'm asking for George's sake. And for Sophia. It was the closest thing to humility I'd ever heard from her. Not quite an apology, but an admission of need. It wasn't enough. I'll think about it, I said before ending the call. That evening, Sophia and I had a long discussion about her family's situation. Despite everything, I didn't want George to suffer for Eleanor's pride. We came up with a plan, one that would help the family while establishing clear boundaries moving forward. As Sophia prepared to return to the mainland the next day, she asked the question that would determine our future. Will you come back with me? I looked around at the peaceful home I'd created for myself. Then, back at the woman I still loved, despite everything. Not yet, I answered honestly. But soon, on my terms. Not to the mansion, but maybe it's time we finally found that house we've been looking for. She nodded. understanding that whatever came next would be different from what came before. As we said goodbye at the airport, I knew we were at a turning point, not just in our marriage, but in how her entire family would relate to me going forward. The situation at the mansion deteriorated rapidly after Sophia returned. She called me daily with updates, each more concerning than the last. The bank had officially initiated foreclosure proceedings. George, under immense stress, had developed heart problems and was under doctor's orders to rest. Michael had withdrawn from Harvard Law entirely to work full-time and help with expenses. Amanda was working nights at a hospital while trying to continue her medical studies. Most surprisingly, Eleanor had taken a second job waiting tables at an upscale restaurant, something she would have considered beneath her just months ago. The woman who had hosted charity galas was now serving food to the same social circle she had once presided over. She comes home exhausted every night, Sophia told me. Her hands are cracked from washing dishes. I've never seen her like this. Part of me felt vindicated. Eleanor was finally experiencing the kind of hard work I had grown up with, the kind she had dismissed as beneath her educated family. But another part recognized that the situation was hurting everyone, not just Eleanor. I had a real breakthrough with Mom yesterday, Sophia said during one of our calls. She broke down completely. I've never seen her cry like that before. What happened? I asked, surprised that the proud woman I knew would show such vulnerability. She admitted that she's always been terrified of losing status. Her own parents were academics who valued education above everything. When Dad's business collapsed, she felt like she was failing them, even though they've been gone for years. Then, when you stepped in and became the provider, it was easier to resent you than to be grateful, because gratitude would mean acknowledging her own family's failure. It was the first insight into Eleanor's behavior that actually made sense. Her treatment of me hadn't just been about my lack of education. It had been about her own insecurities and fear of judgment. She also said something else, Sophia continued hesitantly. She admitted she was jealous of you. Jealous? Of what? Of how easily success came to you without the credentials she spent her life believing were essential. She said it made her question everything she'd been taught about how the world works. This revelation shifted something in my understanding of the past 3 years. Eleanor's cruelty hadn't come from a place of superiority, but from deep insecurity. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped explain it. The next day, I received an unexpected call from George. He sounded tired and much older than his 60 years. Otto, son, I don't know if you'll believe this, but Eleanor asked me to call you. She wants to apologize but didn't think you'd take her call. I'm listening, I said cautiously. She's not the same person who said those terrible things at my birthday, George continued. These months have changed her. Changed all of us. We took so much for granted. Your generosity, your character, your brilliance in business. We focused on what you didn't have, instead of appreciating what you do have. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. I've never been so proud to be wrong about someone as I am with you, Otto. You proved your worth not just through your success, but through your dignity in the face of our family's poor treatment. I'm deeply sorry for not standing up for you sooner. His sincerity was unmistakable, and I found myself more moved than I expected to be. George had always been the most reasonable member of the family, caught between his wife's snobbery and his genuine appreciation for what I had built. Thank you, George. That means a lot coming from you. Will you speak with Eleanor? He asked. She has something important to say to you. I agreed. And moments later, Eleanor's voice came on the line. She sounded nothing like the confident, condescending woman I remembered. Otto, she began, her voice unsteady. I don't deserve your forgiveness or your help. What I said to you was unforgivable. And how I treated you for years, before that, was inexcusable. I let my pride and my narrow definition of success blind me to the remarkable person you are. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. These months have been educational, she said with a bitter laugh. I've learned more about real-life waiting tables than I ever did in my doctoral program. I've learned that the people I thought were friends disappeared the moment our status did. And I've learned that my daughter loves a man who had every reason to abandon us but still cares enough to consider helping despite everything. She took a deep breath. I'm not asking for your money, Otto. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I can change, that I can be the mother-in-law you deserve. It was the apology I had never expected to hear, delivered with a humility that the old Eleanor would have found impossible. Still, words were easy. Actions would tell the true story. I appreciate your apology, Eleanor, I said carefully. But trust is rebuilt over time. Not in a single conversation. I understand. She replied quickly. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I recognize how wrong I was. About everything. After ending the call, I sat on my lanai watching the sunset, contemplating what to do next. Sophia had been patient, giving me the space I needed while demonstrating her commitment to changing the dynamics in our relationship. Her family was in genuine crisis, and despite everything, I didn't want to see them lose their home or have George's health deteriorate further. The next morning, I called my lawyer and worked out a plan. Then I booked a flight back to the mainland, not telling Sophia I was coming. It was time to face the situation directly and determine whether reconciliation was possible. Not just with my wife, but with her family as well. 3 days later, I stood outside a downtown restaurant where, according to Sophia, Eleanor was working the lunch shift. I watched through the window as she carried plates and refilled water glasses, her designer clothes replaced by a simple black uniform. The haughty expression I remembered was gone, replaced by the weary look of someone doing unfamiliar physical labor. When her shift ended, I was waiting outside. She stopped short when she saw me, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. Surprise, shame, hope. Otto, she said softly. You're back. Just arrived this morning. I thought we should talk in person. We walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench. Eleanor looked down at her hands, reddened from work and water. I never thought I'd be in this position, she admitted. Waiting tables at 62. Watching our house slip away. Seeing my children give up their dreams to help pay bills. It's humbling in ways I never imagined. That's the thing about life, I replied. It doesn't care about our plans or our degrees. It teaches its own lessons. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. The cruelest part is knowing I drove away the one person who could have helped us through this. Who did help us? For years, while I treated him terribly, we talked for over an hour. She revealed her deepest insecurities, how she had built her identity around academic achievement and social status, how she had panicked when that foundation crumbled, how she had projected her fears onto me because I represented a success model that threatened everything she believed. I was raised to believe there was only one path to respectability, she explained. When you succeeded, without following that path, it felt like a personal attack on the choices I had made and taught my children to make. For the first time, I saw Eleanor as a complete person, not just an antagonist in my life story. She was deeply flawed, but also capable of growth and self-reflection. The question was whether that growth had come too late. I've spoken with my lawyer, I told her finally. I'm prepared to help with the mortgage situation on one condition. Anything, she said immediately. The house will be transferred into a trust. I'll cover the outstanding payments and future mortgage. But the house will no longer be in your and George's names alone. It will be a family asset with conditions about how decisions are made. No one person will have the power to make others feel unwelcome there. She nodded slowly, understanding the significance of the arrangement. I was willing to help, but the old power dynamics would not return. And one more thing, I added. Sophia and I will be finding our own place. We won't be moving back to the mansion, though we'll visit. It's time we established our own household, on our own terms. Of course. Eleanor agreed quietly. That's more than fair. As we parted ways, she hesitated, then asked the question that was clearly weighing on her mind. Can you ever forgive me, Otto? I considered this carefully. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Eleanor. It's a process. I'm willing to start that process. If you are. She nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. Thank you. For everything. Later that day, I surprised Sophia at her office. The joy on her face when she saw me standing in the doorway told me everything I needed to know about our future. Whatever happened with her family, our bond had not only survived but grown stronger through the separation and challenges. That evening, I met with George to discuss the financial arrangements for saving the mansion. He was overwhelmed with gratitude, but also understood that this wasn't a return to the old arrangement. This was a fresh start with clear boundaries and expectations. "You're a better man than I ever gave you credit for," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I'm just a man who loves his wife and wants peace with her family," I replied. "Sometimes that means standing your ground, and sometimes it means offering second chances." As news of my return and the financial arrangement spread through the family, Michael and Amanda reached out separately to express their gratitude and apologize for their passive roles in the dynamic that had driven me away. They had seen their mother's treatment of me but had never challenged it, and both expressed genuine remorse for their silence. The family was healing, but more importantly, they were learning. Sometimes the most valuable education happens outside the classroom, in the moments when life strips away pretense and forces us to confront our true selves. 3 months after my return, Sophia and I closed on our new home, a beautiful property by the lake, about 30 minutes from her family's mansion. It was our space, created on our terms, a symbol of our recommitment to each other and the healthy boundaries we now maintained with her family. The mansion had been saved from foreclosure, with the new trust arrangement ensuring it remained a family asset while preventing any one person from controlling access or decisions. George's health had improved once the financial stress was alleviated, and he had started a small consulting business that kept him engaged without the pressure of his previous firm. Michael had returned to Harvard Law with a part-time schedule, balancing his studies with work at a local firm. The experience had given him a new perspective on privilege and opportunity that made him a more grounded, empathetic person. Amanda continued her medical studies with a new focus on accessible healthcare for underserved communities, something she might never have considered in her previous insulated life. And then there was Eleanor. Of all the family members, her transformation was the most profound. She had kept her job at the restaurant even after the financial crisis was resolved, saying it taught her valuable lessons about service and humility. She had started a support group for displaced homemakers, women who had built their identities around family status and found themselves adrift when circumstances changed. Most significantly, Eleanor's attitude toward me had undergone a complete reversal. Gone was the condescension and thinly veiled contempt. In its place was a genuine respect and, more surprisingly, a desire to learn from me. She asked thoughtful questions about my business, took pride in sharing my accomplishments with her friends, and made visible efforts to connect with me on a personal level. I remained cautiously optimistic about our new relationship. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But each family dinner without a backhanded comment, each conversation where she genuinely listened to my perspective, each moment where she defended me to others in her social circle, these were steps in the right direction. The true test came 6 months after my return, at a charity gala Eleanor had helped organize. Many of the attendees were from her old social circle: academics, professionals with advanced degrees, people who had witnessed her previous dismissive treatment of me. As we entered the ballroom, I braced myself for the subtle hierarchy she had always established at such events. Instead, Eleanor approached us immediately, linking her arm through mine. "Have you met my son-in-law, Otto?" she said to a group of her friends. "He's the brilliant entrepreneur I was telling you about. His company just launched an innovative platform that's revolutionizing how small businesses handle their technical needs." The genuine pride in her voice was unmistakable. Later, when someone made a comment about real-world experience versus academic theory, Eleanor surprised everyone by saying, "Otto has taught me that true education comes in many forms. His success has shown me how narrow-minded I was about what constitutes intelligence and achievement." On the drive home, Sophia squeezed my hand. "Did you ever imagine my mother would become your biggest fan?" I laughed. "Never in a million years. But people can change when reality forces them to confront their biases." The experience had transformed me as well. I had always defined my success in opposition to the academic path I hadn't taken, proving I could succeed without college, proving my worth through financial achievement. Now, I realized that true success isn't about credentials or bank accounts. It's about creating a life aligned with your values and being surrounded by people who respect those values. In a somewhat ironic turn, I decided to fund a scholarship program for entrepreneurial high school students who wanted to pursue non-traditional paths to success. The program provided mentorship, seed funding, and business education outside the conventional college system. Eleanor, surprisingly, became one of its most vocal advocates, speaking about the importance of recognizing multiple forms of intelligence and achievement. My business continued to thrive, eventually expanding internationally with offices in 3 countries. Sophia joined me as a full partner, her financial expertise complementing my creative vision. Together, we built something even stronger than what I had created alone. Looking back on the journey from that humiliating moment at George's birthday party to where we are today, I'm struck by how necessary that crisis was for all of us. Eleanor needed to lose her status to find her humanity. Sophia needed to choose between family expectations and her own judgment. I needed to stand up for myself instead of buying acceptance through financial support. The most profound lesson I learned through all of this is that respect cannot be purchased. You can pay people's bills, fund their educations, maintain their lifestyles, and still be treated as an outsider if you allow it. True respect comes from establishing boundaries, knowing your worth, and being willing to walk away from those who cannot see your value. Money doesn't change people so much as it reveals them. When I was supporting everyone, their true characters were hidden behind gratitude and necessity. When I stopped, the masks fell away, and I could see clearly who valued me for myself and who saw me merely as a resource to be used. If you're in a situation where you feel undervalued despite your contributions, ask yourself, would these people treat me the same way if I stopped giving? The answer might be painful, but it's essential to building authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than utility or obligation. In the end, Eleanor's cruel words at that birthday party were the best thing that could have happened to me, and, ironically, to her as well. They forced us both out of the comfortable patterns we had established and onto paths of genuine growth and self-discovery. Today, Sophia and I are expecting our first child, a boy we plan to name after my father. Eleanor is already planning the nursery, without any mention of what college he might attend someday. Instead, she talks about nurturing his unique talents, whatever they might be. It's a new chapter for all of us, one built on hard-earned wisdom and authentic connections, rather than superficial markers of status or success. What about you? Have you ever supported someone who didn't appreciate your contributions until they were gone? Or have you experienced a transformation in a relationship you thought was beyond repair? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from our most painful experiences. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their worth today. Thank you for listening, and remember, your value isn't determined by your credentials, but by the character you show when facing life's challenges.